Hey guys, well, I've wanted to make this video for about a week now, a little bit less, since last Thursday, when Reckful killed himself, and I've thought about it a lot, and I was going to originally make the video the day of, then the day after, then the day after that, and the reason I put it off is because I'm actually very nervous about making this video. I'm nervous not because I'm worried that I'll get negative feedback or criticism for it. I'm more or less nervous that I won't do this topic justice. I won't say what needs to be said. I won't say what should be said. And I'm going to do my best job to do that, because I think that if there's any video that does deserve that, it's this one. Today I want to talk to you guys about Reckful a little bit, and I also want to talk more about how mental health is perceived online, how you can be a better ally for people that have these mental health problems, and also how we as a community can be better at dealing with and accommodating people with these mental health problems, and just in general being a little bit more understanding. Now, whenever last Thursday, whenever I woke up, first thing I do, obviously, I think everybody that does this nowadays checks their phone and checks Twitter, right? And obviously, Reckful and I followed each other and still do. And well, but he makes the tweet, and he tweets out that he like basically was proposing to like his ex-girlfriend or girlfriend Becca at the time. And I saw this and I thought to myself, oh man, like there's something wrong, and not really that there's something wrong like in terms of a dire sense, but just that he's having a manic episode. There's something, this is a cry for help. This is something. And I read all the comments, people calling him crazy, stupid, and like getting mad at him, etc. And I felt kind of bad about it because I knew Reckful had manic depression, and I think almost anybody that knew him knew that. And I'll be the first to say I didn't know him that well. Like, I talked to Reckful a few times privately. We hung out, I think, twice in real life or something like that, and that's about it. So I never really had like a close relationship with Reckful, but I've always had. An ironic thing about this is that this is something I preach against, but I've always had kind of a parasocial relationship with him, because he's been, one of the hallmarks and grandfathers of streaming, and for 10 years now, and for a while, for even longer. So whenever I saw this happen, I was, it's kind of sad to see, really, to see somebody who has accomplished so much, who's done so much, put themselves in a position like this where they just get made fun of and ridiculed. And I went on my stream and I was talking about this, and people were just like kind of memeing about it and laughing about it and whatever. And I was just like, fucking assholes, right? Well, then news hit, and I don't really know what about it bothered me so much. Usually these kinds of things don't really affect me a whole lot. I'm a pretty stoic person. I'm not very emotional, but for whatever reason, the situation with Reckful really did kind of affect me. Maybe because I had to process it and deal with it online at like in real time, extemporaneously. But I don't know really what it was, but it actually genuinely affected me and bothered me in a way that very few things ever do. And I think that if I had to put my finger on what it really could be, it's that I always knew Reckful had problems, but I never really thought anything bad would happen. And how stupid am I for believing that? How stupid am I for thinking that? And how stupid we all were. And I felt like such an idiot, because I like the camera that I use on my stream is Reckful's recommendation. Um, I remember I'd watched fucking 10 years ago. I watched Reckful, man. Like, I remember watching him in Cataclysm and Mists of Pandaria. I didn't even know what Twitch was. I just knew, oh, this is the website Reckful's on. Like, I never watched anybody else besides him. Oh, and Kriparian. But that's really all there was for me. And I'd watch him, and to see somebody who had so much promise, who had innovated the platform in such a way, who had innovated WoW in such a way. I beat Reckful in Arena once, and I screenshotted it. That's how impactful it was for me. And to see this happen to him was just so fucking sad. And I think the saddest thing about it is that I feel like obviously a lot of the negativity in social media, ribbing and people like making fun of him and making him feel like shit, etc. on social media. I feel like that obviously didn't help and made him feel worse. But according to almost all of his friends and people who I've talked to who are close with him, they said this wasn't really it. He had much more deeper problems, and I think that's, the scarier thing about it really is that it doesn't matter really what people do, if they're nice to you or if they're not nice to you. Some people just have this in their mind, and it just poisons their mind and makes them do something that's that they shouldn't do. And it's horrible to think about that. And to me, it's awful, because you think about Reckful and like what he did for the streaming community, and he was the one who invented the idea of, or started the idea of, donations being popping up on screen, and then you reading the donations or whatever. And this is something that effectively allowed a lot of streamers to make a living streaming. He enabled that. And I don't think people respect that enough, how many different ways that he changed and innovated streaming. And also, wow, for any of us older guys that played the game back then, everybody watched Reckful 3. And we were all watching the Reckful videos. The day he went live for the first time on Twitch, I don't remember if I was there or not, but I probably was there the second day. It was a very long time ago, so it's hard for me to remember. But to see someone like that fall, it's a tragedy. It really is. And I want to talk a little bit about mental health and what you can do for people who are in your life that are in this situation. And I want to talk about one thing that you can't do. You cannot replace a doctor. You cannot replace a psychiatrist. You cannot replace genuine drugs. There are some times whenever people have these mental disorders that are caused by a chemical imbalance in their brain. Just because somebody's arm isn't missing, just because they're not getting cancer, just because they don't have coronavirus and they're coughing and can barely breathe, doesn't mean that they don't have a problem. And there are a lot of times that I believe a lot of people look at depression and these mental illnesses as moods. And I understand that obviously I can't expect everybody to have like a great understanding of mental health and to just completely understand it, and I don't either. But I think that acknowledging that is the most important thing. And then whenever you acknowledge that, encouraging these people that you care about, these friends, family members, boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever, encouraging them to actually seek proper help, seek real treatment, and make a real change is something that I would recommend and I would promote for anyone. You cannot replace a doctor. You cannot replace genuine prescriptions. You cannot replace a psychiatrist. You can do your best. You can be as supportive as possible. And I don't think that you should avoid doing that at all. But you shouldn't look at the situation and say, how can I fix this? Because oftentimes it's above your pay grade. These people spend 10 years in school learning about this, and they spend decades after school perfecting it. And oftentimes they don't even know what to do. So I understand a lot of people that have this need to try to help somebody like that, and I think go on ahead with it, but don't ever let that need take away from encouraging that person to seek genuine medical help. And I understand, a lot of us here in the US, and I don't think I need to go on too much of a tangent to say that sometimes for some people, based off of certain amounts of income they have, it's not always possible. And that's a whole different conversation, a whole different video. But for people that can do it, that's absolutely what I would recommend more than anything else. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is the way that online personalities and streamers put themselves out there, and the nature of consuming content online and how people become content. There's an old adage for, I think this is used a lot back in the day. It's probably even older than the internet, honestly, is that if you're not paying for a product, you are the product. And on social media websites, for example, you're not really paying to go on Facebook or Twitter, but they're taking your information and they're selling it to ad companies. So that's pretty much what they get out of it. And I think with streaming, it's kind of the same thing. Whenever you watch a YouTube video, you're not necessarily paying for something like that. And on top of that, what is really the product? The product is the person. And I said this on my stream before, that the problem with social media is that people become products, and it's fundamentally cannibalistic whenever you think about it, because what do people do? They consume products. Well, what happens whenever the product is a person? They consume that person. And there's a lot of people who give and give and give more and more and more of themselves until there's nothing left. We've seen this with Reckful. We've seen this with Etika. We've seen this to lesser degrees with people like Mitch, lesser degrees with people like Trainwrecks, and even people like me. Occasionally, I feel, I get in positions like that. You're just completely drained, and you put everything that you have into something, and you put yourself out there, and as such an emotional endeavor, you're doing this. And then whenever the sum total of your personality, your work, your dreams, and your hopes are just discarded by other people, the feeling of rejection there it's very internal, and it's very centered around yourself. It's not something that's, oh well, they just don't like this or don't like that. It's they don't like you, and it's very hard for a lot of people to process that. And I think that's something else that really differentiates online criticism and online negativity and hate and harassment, etc., from things that happen in real life. And I'm not saying one of them is worse than the other, but what I think makes the online harassment and negativity and that kind of stuff more insidious and subversive is the fact that whenever you're reading a negative comment about yourself, whenever you're reading something that somebody's saying that's, you're a piece of shit or whatever, you're reading that comment, Asmongold is a piece of shit. Whenever I read that, I just read that in my voice. So in a way, I'm telling myself that. And I think that in that way, the criticism and negativity and harassment online makes it so much easier for people to internalize because they're reading that criticism and negativity in their own voice, in their own mind. And because it occurs there, I think that it's so hard to get it out. And for a lot of people out there, it's kind of hard to really relate to this because it's something that streaming and whatever is seen as kind of a glamorous job in a lot of ways. And in a lot of ways, it is. It's great. In many ways, I enjoy it a lot. I consider myself very lucky. But there are also negative aspects to it. And I think this is kind of one of them. Really, I've seen this over the past few years where there's been a trend towards being as vitriolic and emotional as possible and getting as mad as possible about things and trying to turn things into as much of a drama fest as possible rather than looking at things more realistically and fairly and giving people the benefit of the doubt. And I see this a lot where somebody will make a comment or say something and the comment can be interpreted in like this one way that would be kind of bad, and then people take somebody's comment or their statement and then they interpret that statement or comment in the worst possible way, and then they take that and assume that's what the person originally meant. And I feel like this type of behavior is intellectually dishonest, it's disingenuous, and it's also just it's toxic. It's not what the person usually means to say. And I think that the first thing that we can do as a community is try to break down the barriers between a streamer and the content creators, and realize that for me, for example, look at my room. Like this is I remember I got this poster right here from Nintendo Power in like what, 1998. That is the original Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time poster. I'm just a fucking nerd that's still living at my mom's house. I'm not some god on Mount Olympus. It doesn't matter how many people are watching me on a stream. It doesn't change who I am. I used to think that it would. I thought that whenever I got 5,000 viewers, I would be, I would feel that I would fill that empty hole inside of myself, and I got that, and it was still there. And then I thought, well, I mean, if I get 10,000, there's no way I'm going to feel that way. Well, yeah, there is. Yeah, there is. Well, what about 20? I mean, 20,000, you're a big streamer at that point. You're at the top of your game. You're one of the biggest streamers on a platform. There's no way you can feel that way whenever you have 20,000 viewers. And man, I think that I felt even worse. And then, okay, well, you know what? If I have 10,000 average, like that is just all the time people watching me on an average, maybe then it'll be okay. And you know what? I got it and nothing changed. And then I went up to 30,000 and 40,000 and 30,000 average, 40,000 average. I think that's about what I have now. I'm not even really sure, but in Classic it was even more than that. And what changed? Nothing. And if anything, it made it worse, because the closer that you got to your goal that you felt was so far away, and then reaching it, and the success just is, it's fleeting and meaningless. It doesn't actually matter at all. It made me really sit back for a while and think, well, what am I doing this for? What am I doing at all? And I thought about this a lot, and I took a lot of time and I talked to myself, and I thought to myself, and I spent time. Usually, I'll lay in a room, in my room in the dark, and I'll just lay down and I'll think, and I'll think, and I'll talk to myself, and having those internal conversations, those monologues, and really kind of tapping into that metacognition, the thinking about your own thinking and breaking that down and trying to understand yourself is something that I believe a lot more people should try to do. And it's something that's helped me a lot in understanding myself, because I feel like in order to truly be successful in a lot of things, you have to have a very strong understanding of the self, of yourself, in order to be able to develop whatever you're trying to do in the best way possible, and make sure that you're making the right decisions that are best for you. I know that I've made a number of wrong decisions because I didn't inform myself of myself. I just did whatever I thought would work theoretically for another person. But does what works for another person work for me? No, not always. It doesn't. And I think that's important for everybody to understand. Never try to be somebody else. Always try to be yourself. And in terms of that, why am I talking about this poster? Why am I talking about talking to yourself? Why am I talking about how it doesn't matter? It's because I'm really no different than you are. I'm not. I make videos and that's about it. I go to McDonald's after my stream, just probably like you do. I go to, Walmart and I get my bread and I get my drinks, and maybe I buy a t-shirt just like you do. The idea that streamers and viewers are different people and they're cut from a different cloth is untrue. We're all the same. And I think that so often in the community, especially now whenever streaming is becoming much more mainstream, you're seeing people get, multi-million-dollar deals, etc. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter what house you live in, what car you drive. You're still, at the end of the day, many times just some gamer, some guy that plays video games and really likes them, or is kind of funny or quirky, or maybe he's just really good. And these types of things, I think that people can see that, and they draw these points of difference between streamers and other people in a community. And there's so much like gatekeeping and purity tests and things like that, that we stop thinking about what we have in common, and all we do is spend our time thinking about what's different. And I think that spending more time thinking about what's common between us will do a lot for giving people the opportunity to really understand where another person is coming from, rather than just taking what they say in the worst possible way and then getting really angry about them saying it in that really bad way, even though that's not what they originally intended. Now, I'm going to look at this as a pyramid, and I'll kind of give you guys a metaphor for why I think it's important for not just streamers to change, because I think streamers obviously should change too. Avoiding negativity and toxicity in general in like chat, for example. I'll talk about this for just for a minute. Every once in a while, I'll read like a negative comment, and I'll read messages that disagree with me because I feel like that's what moves the conversation forward. But there is a small problem with that, because whenever I do that, it creates a reward structure around disagreeing with me. So then people will disagree with me, and that's not a bad thing. But if they disagree with me in bad faith, it is kind of a bad thing. If they're interpreting something I'm saying in a way that I'm not saying it, it's like, okay, I see what you're doing. But it's very important to make sure that you don't do that as a streamer, that you don't create a positive reward loop around people being abusive or harassing to you by giving them attention, because oftentimes that's what they want more than anything. So if they get your attention by being abusive, then they've just been rewarded and the behavior will continue. And that's something that you never want to have happen in a community. But let's talk about the pyramid analogy, metaphor, whatever. So you can look at a pyramid, like the Great Pyramid of Giza or whatever, and you have like the very, very top, and that's where, they have like all the engravings and all the cool looking stuff up at the very, very top of the pyramid. And, we can say that's like the streamers, or that's the YouTubers or the content creators or whatever. But the fact is, that's just such a small little part. And really, where the foundation is, what holds those people up, is the bottom. and the bottom are just bricks. There's just a bunch of bricks. And that's the community. The community is the foundation of the pyramid. The community is the foundation of what holds everything up. And if the community has structural problems, the top is going to fall the fuck down. It doesn't matter what it is. And the point that I'm making is that if you want to see change in the community, don't wait for a streamer to do it. Don't wait for a person like, like whatever to do it. Don't wait for a change in the rules. Be the change that you want inside of the community and advocate for those things on your own. There are plenty of ways that you could, promote positivity and understanding rather than promote negativity and vitriolic behavior. It's not something that does anybody any favors, including the people that I believe are participating in it. I think it even hurts them too, because it just makes them angry and upset. And it's this weird thing where I believe people nowadays are almost addicted to getting upset and angry. You see people that you'll look at their Twitter accounts, and every single one of their tweets is overwhelmingly negative. They're saying somebody's a piece of shit. They're calling somebody ugly. They're just being mean. They're being a bad person or whatever. And just, trying to find some sort of negative angle on everything. And people like that it's important to understand them and see, listen, what's going on, man? Why are you acting like this? But also there are people who just get something out of, ruining other people's day. And it's important to take those people and make sure that they're not the ones that are being rewarded for their behavior. Because what ends up happening is you create a positive reward structure for this negative behavior by, liking tweets on Twitter or upvoting posts on Reddit or whatever. And by doing that, you encourage more of that behavior in the future. And that's not something that streamers can really change. That's not something that YouTubers can really change. It's something that you as a community can change. And if you want to be a change for a positive, change for the better, just start doing it now. Don't wait for somebody to tell you to do it. Every single person has their own voice and they can do what they want to do. And so if you want to change this, I'm waiting. Go on ahead. That's the main thing, man, is that every single person has a way to make this happen less. And as I said before, I don't think that people like this, LSF or whatever, didn't make Reckful do what he did. No, I don't think so at all. Probably made his day worse, probably made him more unhappy. But did it cause him to do it? No, I don't think so at all. And it was just making everything a little bit worse. And I also don't really agree with banning or deleting live stream fails. I know there's been a lot of conversations about this. People have talked to me about this on Twitter. I don't believe in deleting it because then they'll just make another one. It doesn't matter. I want to reform and make the community better. And I think that the way that you do that is lead by example. And this is something that I need to do myself. I've tried to do a lot more ever since I came back to streaming, and other people need to do as well. If you want to be a change, if you want a positive community, you have to be a positive actor in your community, because again, it's not your community. You are part of the community. It's not like you are above them or you're separate. You are part of the whole community as a streamer or as a content creator. And that sense of camaraderie is something that I believe will really help in developing an understanding between the creators and the consumers and the viewers and subscribers, or whatever you want to call it. And having those people understand where you're coming from, or at least give you the benefit of the doubt, is something that's going to go a long way. And I understand this has been kind of a long video, but I do want to say, if you've made it this far, I really appreciate it. It's been something that's been weighing on my mind a lot, and I wanted to talk about this for a long time because it's something that it matters a lot to me, and it has to do with the overall health of our community in every single different way. So if you feel like this is something that means something to you and is a noble and worthy pursuit, you can start today. You can start right now. There's not a point of waiting for some other content creator to do this. You can do it at this very moment. Be the change that you want to see. And hopefully we can make our community better. And maybe it's hard to say that, maybe we won't prevent somebody from killing himself, but we could at least make somebody not feel like shit. And obviously, there are times that people do bad things and they deserve to be criticized for it. I'm not saying that criticism is a bad thing, but there's this point where criticism does turn into hate, and I think that it's kind of hard to see where that line is all the time. But many times it's a lot more black or white than gray. So I hope you guys understand pretty much where I'm coming from. I really appreciate you all watching. If you have any more feedback or I don't know, like comments about this, I will probably be reading pretty much all the comments. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Peace.